So, hello and welcome to the Global Mindful Drinking Festival. My name is Dru Jaeger. I'm one of Club Soda's co-founders, and I'm super delighted to be joined by this panel this morning, or this evening, depending where you are in the world, to talk about this business of socializing sober. If you're drinking less or not at all, maybe you're just having a night off and going out, maybe you are connecting with your friends and family and don't want to drink, whatever reason, whether it's a forever thing or a just for tonight thing, how you do that if you're not drinking alcohol. So we're going to be having a conversation about our own experiences and about navigating drinking cultures. One of my reflections in this is that socializing and connection is really in the spotlight in the pandemic. We've been separated from each other in our homes for periods of time. We've experienced lockdowns in different parts of the world. And we've always had this history in many bits of the world of conflating socializing and drinking, but we're now also conflating socializing and freedom from illness as two concepts which are inherently bound together. So we're navigating quite a complex world of expectations around socializing and how we do it. So I hope we're going to have a really interesting discussion on that. I want to start off just with a round of intros, if that's all right. If you can tell us a bit about you and also your favorite alcohol-free drink when you are socializing. And let's start with you, Ron, if that's all right.
Hi, so I'm Rhondell. I'm part of the Yarder Collective. I'm one of the co-founders, and we started an alcohol-free bar in Derby, which is in the same centre of England. My current favorite alcohol-free drink is either probably Lucky Saint or Vanstone IPA, and that's what I go for at the moment.
A bit of a beer drinker.
Yes.
Oh, excellent. How about you, Matt?
Hi, I'm Matt. I'm the artistic director and CEO of Outside Edge Theatre Company, and we run free drama activities that support people's recovery maintenance from drug and alcohol misuse, but also harm reduction or just a sober space for them to be creative in. And my favorite non-alcoholic drink when I'm out socializing is probably soda water with lime cordial.
Oh, excellent. Lime and soda. Actually, funny story, right at the very beginning of Club Soda, we actually genuinely thought of making a map of the UK, mapping prices of lime and soda in different places. The most expensive I ever had was £8 for a lime and soda at Soho House.
Wow. No.
Fun fact.
Did it taste any different though from the sort of £2?
No, it was basically a big glass of soda water with lots of ice and very like 7 fresh limes cut up in it. I mean, it was nice. It was excessive, really. But anyway, yeah. Mandy, how about you?
Hi, so I'm Mandy, and I am I'm the co-founder of Love Sober. We do the Love Sober podcast. We wrote the book Love Yourself Sober, which is a self-care guide to alcohol-free living for busy mums. So I'm a coach. I work a lot with women who are changing their relationship with alcohol and learning to love life sober. For me, going out drinking, I guess it's probably like a mojito. So mojito, non-alcoholic, at home, Heineken 0.0 or Gimba. I really like Gimba.
Yeah, if people haven't had it, really incredibly, it's the gingeriest thing I think I've ever tasted in my life. Like,
and actually something quite nice is to do Gimba and a lager, so you have like a ginger. Yeah, it's pretty good. I put it on my stories and Gimba were like, really? And I was like, look, try it. Like, this is something you should try.
I'm definitely going to try that.
Yeah.
Brilliant drink strips. And Victoria.
Yeah, hi, I'm Victoria and I write the blog Drunkmummysobermummy.com, and I'm the host of the Sober Awkward podcast here in Australia, so it's the evening over here. I've also written a book called 1,000 Wasted Sundays, which is a sort of comedic look about becoming a sober parent, and hopefully that might be out next year, but you never know.
Yay. Yay.
My favourite drink. Oh, yes, sorry. My favourite drink is definitely the Liars I think it's called the Italian Spritz. Oh, yummy.
Yeah, you're not the first person who said that. It's a popular choice. I have to say my go-to drink when I'm out socializing is always an alcohol-free beer. I feel really fortunate actually. I largely don't drink when I'm out socializing with people. And I've got groups of friends now who are entirely used to the fact that I don't drink and will go to the bar and ask for me on my behalf what they've got that's alcohol free, which is a great joy. And, you know, the ubiquity of alcohol free beer behind bars genuinely is a lifesaver for me. Last weekend, I was at a big family wedding in Ireland, which is everything that you'd imagine in terms of the consumption of Guinness and Jameson. And I was incredibly grateful for the presence of Heineken Zero behind every bar in the Republic. It's a very, very good thing. So one of the things for people who are watching this, either live or on catch up, when people are at the beginning stages of thinking about changing their drinking, this business of socializing can really come to the fore. And I think because a lot of our culture can be around confusing drinking and socializing as being the same thing. And I'd love to hear your experiences really of what life's been like for you as you've changed your drinking, or you know other people who've changed their drinking, how that affects socializing. And I wonder if you might share some reflections on that. Could we start with you, Vic, in Australia?
Yeah, so it started off very slowly for me. I hid my stopping drinking for about 18 months because I felt like the only person in the world that didn't drink anymore. So it was a huge step for me to come out after 18 months after discovering this sober, curious community out there that I had no idea existed until I read Ruby Warrington's book. I discovered a community that did socialise and drink, and it was a real, incredible moment for me because I realised that I wasn't the only person in the world, and that can be very, very lonely for people starting out on this sort of zigzaggy sobriety path, is that fear of being the odd one out. And that was a huge fear of me and for any party girl or addict with backstage passes, as I like to call myself. But I found it very, very hard at the beginning. And even now, I still have to stop and take deep breaths and remind myself why I'm doing this and why I'm there and why I'm still socializing. Because I do love that feeling of human connection. And I do enjoy the authenticity of socializing now. Whereas before I was in a blackout and just rambling around, doing a dead fly dance on the floor, or a terrible swan dive and cutting my chin. I think I had a chin scar on my chin and blood on my chin for most of the 90s from some sort of misplaced swan dive. But I have learnt very, very slowly and surely how to sober socialise. It has been a very difficult path, and I will admit that I still sometimes find it difficult, and I have to take time out of most sober situations and go and lock myself in the bog or something just to take a few deep breaths and remember my why I'm doing this and why I want to be a sober socialiser. So I will definitely say it takes time and effort, but it is so worth it. And now to experience authentic conversations that I will remember, even if I do leave a bit early in the taxi on the way home and I don't go to the kebab shop and I don't do all the things I used to do, I have a different life, but it's a much happier life. And for me, that makes it also worthwhile.
That's brilliant. I hear what you say about, still occasionally feeling nervous. In the run up to the wedding last weekend, I actually spent about 6 weeks worrying about it.
Yeah.
Worrying, because I am somebody who drinks occasionally, worrying, do I want to drink at this event? Do I not want to drink at this event? How do I want to approach this? How am I going to cope if they don't have an alcohol-free beer? What are my options going to be? And I really tied myself up in knots about it, and was genuinely worried until literally I was in the event and it was happening. I was like, okay, no, I've got to get on with it. It's going to be fine, and I'll make it work. So no, I hear that a lot. Mandy, what's your experiences of socializing as you've changed your drinking?
Yeah, well, so I've been on this sober path for about over 8 years. So I've been continuously sober now for 4.5 years. So right at the beginning, sort of that first year that I did, I think the reason why I returned drinking after a year, like even though so much had changed that was positive, my mental health was better, I was feeling better, I was sleeping again, a lot of things had changed, but it was the fear of socializing and who I was. I hadn't attached my own personality to being a sober person. I was essentially, just not doing the thing anymore. So when we moved when I was a year sober, we moved to where we are now, and I just meeting people, I was like, I can't be sober. Like, how can I do that and make friends? So, I started drinking again, and I was off and on for about 3 years because I knew it wasn't right for me, but I just didn't know how to be. So the first kind of access point was making sober friends. So my first ever sober event was a club sober a very long time ago, one of the first in a pub in East London. And then it was like, okay, right, I've got a base here. These are some people I can connect with. Online forums, they were the kind of place where I could just talk about things, which helped to kind of sort of establish myself and really own that sober personality of who I wanted to be. And then in the wider sense, it was about becoming discerning about my relationships. I had to be discerning about my relationship with alcohol. It was like it wasn't working anymore and I needed to change it. But it was also kind of looking at my social relationships and understanding that actually I had quite a lot of toxic relationships in real life, people that I tried really hard to stay friends with, despite living in another country, despite them doing things I didn't want to do. So it was a real shift to just, asking myself that question of like, is this relationship balanced? Is it meaningful to me? Do I have to go? Do I want to go? And with good friends that it really doesn't matter, because you go and have a coffee with them as much as you sort of drink a glass of wine, you just go for a walk with them, and alcohol wasn't the center point. And then I'd have other relationships where it's like, these things don't work if we're not wasted. So it was about sort of going, right, saving my energy. Okay, so where do I really want to go? Who do I really want to see? I live in France, so that's a whole other challenging thing because obviously, alcohol is very cultural in a different way. The UK, it's about, getting wasted, binge drinking, that sort of festive side. Whereas here, it's very much we're at dinner and this is an important part of your kind of cultural identity. So here it's the thing with French people is they're very health focused and they don't really like people being drunk. So it was better for me to be sober Mandy than to be that Mandy. So that was kind of the angle there of just like, okay, I'd rather just sort of have nothing. My husband still drinks. We've got a wine cellar in our house. Wine was a huge part of our relationship. But that's just been a general constant conversation of like, what else can we do? How much it's okay that I can handle he drinks, because I think that's a real thing. It's like you've got a tolerance level. Mine's about 2 hours in a social situation and then I need to leave. And so it's just getting, kind of understanding your needs within social situations. I think that's kind of key for me.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, Mandy. Actually, I used to say that I had a 2-pint limit, which actually still, for me, as somebody who does drink occasionally, is a good rule of thumb. But actually, I've come to understand that my 2-pint limit is really about other people.
Yeah.
Once you're on your third pint, you're not having an interesting conversation with me, and you're telling
you're
me
not connected, right? So it's just like you've lost that intimate connection with that person. So it's just,
and you start to realize as well with exactly what you're saying is that high that we experienced with alcohol when we were out, it was so short-lived and we're just living for that short-lived high all the time. Whereas now I go out and I'm not preoccupied with that high. I'm occupied with what's going on around me, with my friends, the conversations and the fun that I'm having, and I feel it in my heart. Whereas before that was all gone, it was numbed out, and I didn't get to feel the room. I didn't get to feel the ambience or the music. I was just all over the joint. So there's definitely something there to say, like, it's not just about you in that situation, it's about how your heart reacts and how you're able of not being preoccupied with booze for once. And that is a real relief. It's like a huge weight being lifted off my shoulders, and I guess it probably would be for you guys as well. It's like when you go out, you don't have to think about alcohol all the time, and that is just huge.
Yeah, I mean, talking about going out and not having to think about alcohol, Ron, you've actually set up a space which is deliberately this. It's a space for socializing which isn't centered on alcohol. Can you tell us a bit about that, about your experiences and about socializing not centered on drinking?
Yeah, so literally for all the reasons you guys said, that's why we set up. So for we'd recognise that actually some of our friends at uni, so I'm only 26, so I've only come out of uni about 4 or 5 years ago. We started to notice just some of our friends how lenient they were on it. Like they couldn't dance without it, or I couldn't go speak to that person without it. Like just really poor excuses of not wanting to do something without having 2 or 3, which it just seemed quite scary at the time. So we wanted to create a space where our groups of friends could kind of mix. I had a group of friends from churches who didn't really drink but drank a bit, and then I was part of the rugby team where drinking was just like water. So yeah, I've found it, and kind of listening to your conversations as well, I've found it quite interesting being in those 2 spaces. Because for one group of friends, I was a heavy drinker, and for another group of friends, I was basically sober. So I'm still figuring that one out, and trying to understand how I fit within both those spaces. So yeah, that's why we set up the alcohol-free bar, to kind of reinvigorate and refocus that connection, that intimacy. How do you hold a conversation without having alcohol as a bit of a buffer? And people have loved it so far. They've enjoyed coming and being with friends in the evening, to socialize without not just the driver of alcohol, but the atmosphere of it as well. We've had a few pubs say to us, "Oh, well, we've got some alcohol-free options. Why don't you just come here instead?" And we've had a few customers say, "Well, that's not just the reason. It's the fact that the rest of the atmosphere around me isn't a great fit for me." So yeah, so it's been quite interesting for me trying to kind of, so like from a rugby perspective, I might have 1 or 2 after a game, kind of to connect with the guys and kind of be in that space. But like you were saying, Drew, that 2-3 limit, and say, okay, well, actually, I'm going home now. But I actually feel like I've enjoyed it. I've not woken up in the morning and gone, well, that was just a terrible waste of my time. I've enjoyed that connection. I've been with my friends, and I've not got absolutely hammered, and I'm allowed to go home and wake up in the morning and feel great. So yeah, so I'm probably a few steps behind some of you guys. I'm still trying to figure out how I fit within those spaces, how I behave, how I act, what's good for me. I'm still figuring that one out. But yeah, it's definitely changed. I noticed before that I was socializing without alcohol. I just didn't really recognize it. So I think when I was in those 2 different groups, I was then able to kind of mix the 2 a little bit and go, well, actually, I know I speak with these friends without it. So why can't I with these guys? I'm still figuring that out.
Yeah, I think it's a really useful reflection, actually. The idea that you could be a heavy drinker in one situation compared to others, and basically a lightweight in another compared to another. That's a really useful reflection, just to notice that different groups of people drink in different types of ways.
Yeah, that's certainly my case. In the UK, I'm a normal heavy drinker, but in France I was like, wow, like shocking. I was the one drinking with the men, having cognacs, and and all the other women were being petite and having a little cigarette or whatever. And the other thing I just wanted to pick up on what Rhondell said was that social anxiety piece of creating spaces that are safe for people, because I think that was one of the reasons why I drank, is because I'm actually quite introverted, quite anxious. And so going into a busy pub with loads of noise, I think I have sensory processing issues. So it's really overwhelming for me to be in that space. So I down a drink when I arrived, just to calm it down a bit. And now I find, unless I really know and trust someone, I've got trauma stuff too, but I find people drunk really quite scary. Like, it puts me on edge. So I think it's about, people being honest about their mental health, and just being with people that love them and respect them, because for me it's like, this is a danger zone for me if you're wasted. Unless it's my best mates, I don't feel safe. So it's about sort of understanding that side of why you drank. For me it was very anxiety based, and so I need to sort of be in safe spaces, I think, which is why I tend to draw myself to sober spaces more.
Yeah,
and we've found as well that
finally. Oh, sorry, I was just going to ask Matt to introduce.
Sorry, I was just going to say we've found as well that we've had a few people come into the bar who have changed their drinking, but as a result, they don't want to hang out with their friends, or their friends don't want to hang out with them. So we've had a few people come in by themselves, and that's been quite interesting hearing their stories about, okay, I've changed my drinking, but now this. How do I now interact and find new friends? And thankfully, we're a little bit of a space for that. But actually, for us, it's trying to encourage them. Well, how about bringing them here, or finding a way to still interact with those friends, but still kind of hold on to your new drinking habits as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Matt, finally, our final introduction. Can you tell us a bit about you, your background, and also how your experiences of socializing without alcohol, what are they like for you?
It's sort of, I mean, what Rhondell sort of talking about, like, I think sort of dovetails really neatly into what we do at Outside Edge. So we hold that safe space, that safe sort of sober, abstinent space for people. I'm going to use the term recovery, and I know that that's very, very loaded, but when I talk about recovery, I'm talking more about probably what everyone here is talking about, which is a mindful consumption of alcohol, or the decision not to drink alcohol or to take drugs. So it's about being in control, I suppose, of that as a choice, rather than being led by either the addiction or the drive to sort of consume beyond what you would necessarily want. So I understand how loaded the term recovery is going to be, but it's just that it's in all of my vocabulary for fundraising purposes and also talking with stakeholders. So I apologize right up front.
That's fine. You're in a safe space. You can use the word recovery here.
Well, yeah, but it's a funny one, because I think that for people that aren't involved in trying to sort of think through this work, that's a really easy go-to word to describe everything. But actually, it's quite, people's journeys through that are very, very nuanced. I think that that's something that I've come to understand over the last 3 years since running this company, that it's not, you can't find a catch-all phrase for what people are experiencing or going through. So I just sort of front load the conversation by not apologizing, by explaining what I'm going to mean by recovery. But we deliver these drama activities, which are free for people in the community, to create this sense of safe space and to bind together a recovery community, which now sort of exists across London, which is founded in this idea that people can have a shared interest, but also a shared lived experience or a shared goal. So their shared interest is the arts, it's drama, creative writing, dance, whatever the activities are that we're providing. The recovery community, though, is that sense of shared goals. So the only criteria for attending one of the Outside Edge weekly groups is that you have to be sober or abstinent on the day. So you just can't have used either drugs or alcohol up to the moment that you walk through the door. Whatever you do after the session, it's totally up to you and without judgment. So what we're trying to do is create a sort of goal, or a sort of I almost call it like a lily pad for people to leap to across the week if they need that sober socializing. And it's pretty rare, especially in London, to find that. And if you're coming out of a community or out of an experience in which all of your friends are drinking or all of your friends are using heroin or other drugs, you do need to start to find those communities of people that have that shared harm reduction goal or reduced drinking goal or mindful drinking goal or complete abstinence goal and go towards them. But for many of the people that access the Outside Edge activities, they're not 12-step, or they don't really like to go to a weekly AA or NA meeting or a smart recovery meeting where they're sort of beyond having to do that on with any regularity. So what they're really looking for is an opportunity to socialize with people where they don't have to sort of apologize for not drinking, or they know that it's a safe space to say, actually, I'm getting really triggered by it right now by, X, Y, and Z. So we just hold a safe space for people, and we use arts and creativity to bind that community together. So I guess I should sort of come out right now and say I still drink. I have become more mindful because of the nature of the work that I do. So I think my sense of sober socializing now, or of my own sort of alcohol consumption, is that I am much more sensitive and aware of the journey that my body and my emotional life or my emotional states go through when I'm drinking or when I'm sort of slightly hungover. And so for me, it's been a really interesting 3 years, because I think my relationship to alcohol, though the consumption hasn't necessarily changed, I think my understanding of the impact that it has on my life at certain moments has changed. And definitely during lockdown, I mean, we were experiencing drug and alcohol treatment services in London, this really sort of fascinating shift towards what one of our trustees who works in the sector called the Merlot furlough cohort. So all these people who were off, on furlough in the middle of the afternoon started drinking, and so we saw this, this really sort of influx of people affected by alcohol rather than other drugs coming through services. And I suppose because of my sensitivity now to sort of, what's going on in my brain when I'm drinking and when I'm sort of, the day after I've had something to drink, I did the opposite. I really reduced my alcohol consumption during lockdown, because it was emotionally so difficult to just deal with things day by day. I just couldn't add a depressant on top of that. So it was the first time I think that I really kind of did a shift where I went, actually, I am choosing not to do this because I know what in the long term or what the day after effect is going to be. And so I have become much more mindful in my approach to consumption, which has been sort of a fascinating thing for me to go on.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for sharing that, Matt, and for being honest about your experiences. One of the things which is really important to us in Club Soda is that we are open to everyone, however it is that you're changing your drinking. And one of the things which I'm really passionate about is that we have, communities like Club Soda and Love Sober and others. We attract people who are actively thinking about their relationship with alcohol. But there's 75% of the population, at least, who are drinking alcohol on a regular basis, regularly consuming a psychoactive substance and never talking about it, never thinking about it, never actually kind of reflecting on how it affects them, whether they like it, whether they don't like it. It's so interesting for me, kind of observing now people, particularly in social environments like pubs, realizing how hard it is to not drink in those situations when you've got an environment which is entirely organized to encourage you to consume alcohol. To not consume alcohol in that situation takes some effort, and we shouldn't be surprised when we set up our home environment and our socializing environment and our pubs and all of these other things to make alcohol available, that people drink it. I mean, that shouldn't come as a surprise, but it does actually interestingly come as a surprise to some people who find themselves back at the bar ordering a fourth drink and not understanding why they're drunk. But because you're in an environment which makes that possible. I was away last weekend. I was in a resort. I haven't been on holiday for a long time, and you can go on holiday in Australia now a little bit, and it was just up the road, and I was with my family, and our subject on the podcast the week before last was triggers, exactly what you're saying. And I was saying, I haven't had a trigger for a while. It's been really nice. I've really learned how to be in these social situations and be myself and be happy. And literally, like the next day, I was sat on a sunbed with my mocktail, my like mango smoothie or whatever it was I had. And every 2 seconds, a tray of drinks went past me from morning until night. It was non-stop. And I just thought, I did have a moment. I was like, God, what am I doing? Like, I am the only person here who is not drinking. I do feel like I stick out like a sore thumb. And it felt very, very awkward to me. And I can imagine why in those moments you would just go, oh, F this, I'm going to the bar and I'm going to go and have a drink so that I can just be like everybody else and relax and have fun. Because that is still the mindset, isn't it? That you're going to sit by a pool, you're going to have a cocktail, you're going to chill out, and that's the perfect holiday vibe. And I did have a moment, even though I'm 4 years sober, I thought, God, I'd really like a drink now just so I can be like everybody else. Well, of course I didn't. I took deep breaths and I could recognise the need in people. They weren't relaxed. I could see that they were thinking about the next drink. They didn't want their kids to come back from kids club because they were getting a few more beers down their neck. Whereas I was like, come on kids, let's go, we'll get out of this environment and go for a walk. And that's the difference, is being able to see the need so clearly. Like when I go to a pub or anywhere like that now, you see the need, and it's such a relief to not have that need and not have those triggers anymore. But it doesn't mean to say they go away forever, of course. They're still there, sneaking around like a sneaky stalker somewhere, probably. That feels like a really useful jumping off point for the next kind of bit of this conversation, really. So this is the second of 2 panels that we've done this weekend on sober socializing. And for anyone who's rewatching this, if you check out the other conversation, we had quite a bit of a conversation about making connections with other sober people or other people who aren't drinking and specific sober socializing activities. And that's a really important element of this, I think, particularly in your early days of change, to build those connections with like-minded people. But I wanted to kind of move the conversation on a bit with this group, really to talk about what it's like to navigate a drinking culture when you are personally not drinking. And Victoria, you kind of touched on that in that kind of holiday environment. Mandy, you've got some lived experience of that in living in France, which has a very different kind of drinking culture than the UK and Australia and other places. But what's that practically? What's that like for you as somebody who doesn't drink, to be in an environment where wine is so important?
Yeah, I mean, it can seemingly be quite culturally offensive not to drink alcohol in France. But but I think, well, one thing I'm lucky because I'm not French. So I think if you're a French person within that, you know, there's an extra element of that kind of cultural responsibility around, you know, because it's economically incredibly important in the French culture. So it's loaded in many ways. It's not just about kind of, you know, fitting in. It's also pride of, you know, the French culture. So I think I get away with it a little bit because I'm British. But certainly it's been a shift. And for me, it's always just been like, I made this mistake in the beginning by being too vulnerable and opening up about my story, you know, so people would ask me, you know, so why don't you drink? And I was like, well, you know, I had a period of depression, and they're like, what, you can't just have one? And I'd be like, well, no, you know, I had burnout from work. They're like, can't you just have a cider? That's what the French people say. It's not really alcohol. And I was like, you know, no, like, you know, I used to be a real party girl, so I can't, you know, so I was go deep into my kind of my vulnerability. And so when I made that shift to just being super positive about it, I'd just be like, you know, oh, so you don't drink? And I'm like, no, I just feel so much better when I don't. And they're like, oh, you know, there's not much you can say to that. They're like, really? Like, and there's always that second question, you know, really not just one? And I'll be like, no, I just don't want to. And they're like, you know, so I think staying super positive about it and planning. I mean, I always go to events with my own, I have a little like ice box with, you know, so I take some beers with me. And I think that's part of, certainly in a culture which is really sort of around food and, you know, sitting together, they panic because they're like, I don't know what to do with this person. So like going with your own drinks, it's like, it's fine. You don't have to worry about this. You know, I'm not missing out and I'm not a problem for you. That's really useful, you know. And so, yeah, and I mean, my French friends have actually been pretty, you know, okay about it. They're just like, whatever works for you. Certainly I've had more with British friends, you know, because it's so much part of our bonding around alcohol. So, and as I said before, that's really just been around, you know, just being discerning. What do I really want to do? And, you know, choosing sort of situations where I really want to be, because I know I trust those people with my sobriety. You know, it's kind of making sure my needs are met in a space, which is huge change, because I was a massive people pleaser and was just like, whatever, yeah, you know, I'll take all the drugs, just be my friend. So like, yeah, it's been a real shift to just be like, okay, actually, what do I need here? And does that match my needs? And actually, no, I prefer to go for a walk. And, you know, with my really heavy drinking kind of party mates, that's been the shift of we'll have brunch together. You know, I won't go to the all night rave with them. I will still go to a rave, but I'll go with like sober mates. So it's about kind of, yeah, shifting. You can still be in the space, but it depends who you're with, and just that kind of, yeah, it's a lot of planning around.
Absolutely. Any other experiences of navigating drinking cultures if you're not drinking?
Yeah, there's something, especially in theater, there's, you know, if you're performing in something, or if you've worked on a piece of performance with people, you always go to the pub afterwards. So there's a real heavy drinking culture, I think, within sort of, you know, arts and entertainment. And I think trying to sort of negotiate or navigate away from that is really, can be quite challenging, because it's a bonding experience, but also, I suppose, if you have been in a performance, or if you have invested yourself in something that you've then sat and watched, your adrenaline and your again, it's biochemicals, so what's happened in your body is a high. And so usually the alcohol, the pub, is a depressant to bring you back down to earth. And also it's completely unsociable hours, because you finish work at 10:30 at night, and so the only thing that's open is a pub. And I think that, you know, there's with the work that we do at Outside Edge, a lot of the sort of safeguarding concerns that we have around our performances are what are the people who are, you know, either abstinent or doing harm reduction or doing mindful drinking, what are they going to go through after a performance? And so we have to find a different way to kind of pull their balloon back down to earth. So we do a group checkout where we, you know, talk very openly about what is probably happening to their bodies at that moment, especially for the people that are that are former drug users because they are experiencing chemically what their body would have when they did coke or some other drugs. Mm-hmm. So we have to kind of make sure that they are, that they are held again in a safe space, but also that they can decompress, come back to earth, and go out into the world and not feel either triggered or feel that they need to, use alcohol or something else to, to ground them again. So it's very much about having an open conversation, about naming it and saying, this is what's probably happening. Mm-hmm. And also let's talk about whether anything has come up in the experience of the performance or in the experience of this checkout now that we need to, support you with and activate a peer support network around you, which is, again, what we've created through a sort of recovery community based in art. So it's a very structured approach to navigating or negotiating a rather standard experience that people, other people in the sector are going through, but we just do it in a very mindful way, knowing what people's lived experience is.
Yeah,
I was just going to say, I think with Matt saying, like, at the beginning, it's really, really, really hard to socialize. But I think it's good to say that it does get easier with time. Like those people that you're dealing with, Matt, it's like kind of really fresh and really, really new. But something I've discovered is that over time, the more you do it and the more prepared you are and the more your sober confidence gets better, the easier it does become. And like being prepared for these nights out and mentally is a really good way, really good to have a structure of what you're going to be doing, what you're going to be thinking, and being prepared what friends or people you don't know even might say to you. I mean, I'm always trying to get my arm twisted when I out, get my elbow twisted, say, come on, Vic, have a drink. And there's something to be said for like being prepared in those moments and having your one-liners ready and saying stuff like, I used to still lie and say that I was driving or I was on antibiotics, but now I just say, F off. What I put in my body is none of your business, which is really what it comes down to. It doesn't matter who you're hanging out with, whether it's your mates or acquaintances or people you've never met before. That's the be all and end all, is what you put in your body is actually no one else's business, and whatever makes you feel happy is the right thing to do.
Yeah, I think it's really important to say you don't owe anyone an explanation for not drinking or not doing drugs or whatever it is that you are not doing. Nobody deserves an explanation for that. Your no is entirely sufficient.
Yeah, definitely.
And an assertive no as well. I think that's quite, I'm not sure how it differs between like a group of females or a group of males or a mixed group. Like, I'm not sure how that would differ, but I know in sporting contexts, like an assertive no is much better than a no, I don't think so today. And then that's you kind of leave yourself a little bit too open there for more discussion where it's like, no.
For persuasion, Yeah,
I actually just wanted to go back to something that Mandy, that you'd said about, that when you were first having these conversations, opening up your vulnerability to people, and I think there's something. I sometimes it made me wonder whether actually sometimes that kind of drink pushing mentality is actually it's not malicious. It's actually somebody trying to solve a problem for you, and they just haven't worked out how to do it. So they're going to their go-to solution, which is, oh, you feel worried? Oh, I'll get you a drink, because that's what I do when I have a drink and I feel worried. And it's actually just somebody else's maladaptive coping mechanism coming in your direction.
Yeah, we have when I work with clients, and within the Love Sober community, just a really simple kind of technique is what we call the RAG system, so red, amber, green. So it's putting the people in your life into 3 categories. So red people is like, say you're on antibiotics, just keep it really simple. They don't need to know anything because they're not safe people and they're not going to particularly support you, or they're going to be those people that are going to be trying to break you down. And then you've got your amber people where you're not sure, that they're important to you, but you're not sure of their kind of safety at this point. So normally they go in the red at the beginning. And then you have your green people that have always got your back, that you can be totally honest with. And I found the amber group, there were points where, it changes. So for example, with my family, there was this consistent non-understanding, but it's because I hadn't given them anything. So when I said, look, my mental health has been really bad, I've been really depressed, really anxious, I had burnout from work, alcohol just really doesn't help me, then it just stopped. It all stopped because they had enough information, as you said, to stop trying to save me in a way that wasn't helpful for me. So I think that's really important. And when you get, skillful at that, it's just like that guy at work, like, he doesn't need any information. You know, that guy at the party was berating me and I told him my whole life story. Like, he was definitely on the red list. And so when you start to, it's like, okay, so, and that's why sober forums and, you know, groups can be really important at the beginning, because those are your green people. You know, you might not have any green people in your actual life, but you can go online and talk to strangers or go to a group and they'll be like, we get you, come on, you can do it. So, you know, it's that filtering system again, and that preparation of who deserves your a bit of your story.
Yeah, I didn't use that F off word with my mum when I told her, even though she was in the red area.
I mean, for me, I think that's a really useful way of thinking about, you know, your interactions with people. For me, the other thing is just to notice, as my relationship with somebody is changing, what are the things that we've done together? And actually, you know, there are people in my life where the only thing we've ever done together is go and drink together or go and take drugs together and party together, you know, and that's our sole connection. So if I'm not doing that, it's a little bit like, you know, if I play football with somebody and then I like injured myself and I can't play football anymore and they keep inviting me to football, I'm like, I can't do that because I can't run because of my legs. So like, I could come and watch you, but that's a bit weird, you know. So, and it is, you know, you do suddenly notice that there are, and it can be okay to let go of those friendships, you know, that they may have added value to your life for some period of time, but if it stopped working for you, it's okay to move on.
But I think that was one thing that sort of lockdown, you know, the COVID, you know, has definitely brought to light, is that there were some friends that just didn't really reconnect with, you know, and that was actually kind of okay, you know, that there were certain contexts in which you sort of knew people and you went, actually, I'm a different person 18 months or 2 years into this, and now I know that we have very much in common. Neither of us really felt the need to reach out to each other, and that's very, I think it's quite adult to say, and that's okay, you know.
I think
it's a lot about putting up boundaries, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think as well, coming out of lockdowns changed that as well, because I think I was on I think it was just generally mental health within the student world course, and they were talking about that lockdown period and that fact that actually you only have capacity for a certain amount of friends, and I think there would be that green list that you only have capacity to kind of share your vulnerability with a certain amount of people. I can't remember how many it was now. So they're that green list that Mandy was talking about. But as the world has opened up, you actually, part of your social requirement, you need those people on the edge. So I guess when people have come out and they've gone, oh, well, who did I used to party with? And then they have reconnected. But then, like you said, Matt, people might have changed in those 18 months. They then don't know how to relate. And then I don't know how people have dealt with those fringe friends if they've not gone through their list of, here's my reds, here's my ambers, here's my greens. They might think, oh, I used to go out with this person, so they're probably a green, and now I'm kind of stuck in that same situation again. So it's been quite interesting seeing people come out of the lockdown period and reconnect with those friends who were just for partying or just for going for a drink. So yeah, that's quite interesting.
I mean, one of the things which I've observed over the past 18 months is that for people who do drink, I don't know anyone who's drinking hasn't changed in some way during lockdown. You know, people who were big social, the classic after work on a Friday drinker wasn't coming home and sitting drinking 6 pints of lager at the kitchen table all by themselves. There's no joy in that because it's not about connection. Whereas, people who are drinking to cope with stress and anxiety, drinking might have rocketed over the past year. And I think one of the things that might have opened up is the possibility of a conversation with more people about drinking. When we're talking about, going to navigate a social space for the first time, if you said to somebody, my drinking really got out of hand during the first lockdown and I'm cutting it out right now, people would totally understand that in a way that wasn't a conversation that you could have had 2 years ago with somebody. So I wonder whether we're actually in a position culturally where we can actually just be more honest about the way in which we've used different substances to cope, or we've avoided those substances because it's helped us deal better with life. I hope that that's what this is opening up for us, is the possibility of being real about our experiences.
I wonder if that's if one of the reasons that it's easier to talk through those things now is because we have a shared we have a shared experience or a shared trauma. Whereas I think sort of in some respects what Mandy was sort of talking about before, which is that there is a sort of need to sort of disclose reasons why you might have sort of issues with alcohol consumption or drug consumption. You have to kind of say, well, there were some mental health issues there, or there was an existing trauma that I need to share with you so you understand why I'm not doing that anymore. Whereas with COVID, we can all just kind of go, well, that was a pretty shitty fucking year, wasn't it? And we all kind of collectively can go, we experienced that together, and therefore there's no need to excuse our reaction to it, because you know that you had the same reaction probably that I did, which was that was a pretty shitty year.
Yeah. And I've certainly seen that with my clients. You know, I had a client recently who contacted me, and it was exactly that kind of, you know, during lockdown, I've noticed my drinking, you know, has escalated, you know, and I used to be able to take a month off, and I'm finding that really difficult now. So I want to do something about it. And I was like, oh my goodness, you know, like early intervention, like hallelujah, because it's been that conversation, seeing it online, having a think about it, being put in that position that, you know, she's got that agency to go, actually, I want to make a change now, which is what we want, right? Because, you know, you don't have to hit rock bottom to change your drinking. You don't have to have a reason. You don't have to be a person. It's just like, if it's not working for you, then that's all the reason you need. So there does seem to be a shift, which is really exciting. And, you know, and the way that why we have these conversations, you know, it's keep talking about it. The more people we can touch early, the more that there is a chance to sort of change things before they get to that point where...
So I'd love to have this conversation towards some practical tips for people. There will be people watching this who are very early in their journey of change, or they might be experimenting with cutting down or taking a break. They might be, you know, a week into being, where are we, 10th of October, you know, it might be day 10 of Sober October for someone. I've got a party coming up next weekend. They're feeling anxious and worried about it. I wonder from each of you, could I get a couple of tips about either preparing for a social event if you're going to do that alcohol-free for the first time, or being in that event? Your kind of top tips for people. Can we start with you, Victoria?
Yeah, so when I used to go out as a drinker, I drank through any emotions I was feeling and numbed out excitement with a cheap red or a pint of Kronenberg. So I think there's a lesson in trying to feel your emotions in those moments and trying to let them pass through your body, whether it's when you go and put the kettle on for a cup of tea in the middle of the chaos, or go into the bathroom, as I said earlier, and have a moment on your own, walk out onto the deck, or even find a sober mate at the party. I mean, there's nothing better than having somebody, especially if they're further along down this path than you, who's there to sort of pep you up before you go out, help you, give you that pat on the shoulder you need to say, look, well done, you're doing a fantastic thing. You're the one that's making changes, and you're the one that's really doing something that's healthy and good. So to have someone else there is a real game changer, I reckon, especially after the party and during and before, because you can go home in a taxi and gossip about all the pissheads all around you, and you know, you could just have a good time with someone who's there to teach you, like a mentor. I think that would be a really great thing to do. Yeah, and take time out to process the emotions, and try not to be too hard on yourself. Shake off the opinions of others, and most of all, be alcohol-free prepared to, as Mandy said, take those drinks with you in your little esky and pour them out, and stick a few, you know, umbrellas and sparklers and parrots on stick, and make your drink fabulous, because you deserve to get a reward as well. So just try and be brave and be strong, and do take those time outs, I reckon.
Brilliant. Ron, any tips from you about socializing not centered on alcohol?
I was going to say the drinks one, to be fair. I think the drinks one's quite key. Just if you're not bringing anything with you, at least know what you can drink when you're there. So if you're going out, check the menus before you go, and then tell a friend that's they don't have to be sober, that they understand you and what the decisions that you're making, just so that they can back you up in any conversations when you have that confident no, or you kind of miss and go, I'm not sure, and then they can at least help you out. So have someone that can help you keep accountable in what you're trying to do. So the drinks and kind of bring a friend is my two tips.
Matt, any tips from you?
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm going to sort of use some terminology that might be a bit loaded here, but it's not going to be a surprise that there's a lot of people in my life right now who are in AA and use that terminology. And one of them, I think, gave the best tip ever to people. And he said that before he goes to a party, if he's feeling sort of socially anxious, he likes he thinks of his higher power as going through the door before in front of him, and then he then follows behind the higher power, and that then he is sort of supported and held by that. And just flip that terminology to whatever you think a higher power needs to be for you, whether it's your sense of positivity about yourself, your sense of authenticity, or maybe it is God to you. Who knows? It doesn't really matter. But I think that idea of someone clearing the way for you and getting rid of that social anxiety by kind of going, let's just clear the decks and you enter. I think that's fabulous.
That's brilliant. Yeah, brilliant. Mandy, any tips from you?
Yeah, similar thing. I mean, your brain doesn't connect very well to things that are real or things that you imagine. So if you visualize yourself the whole evening, take yourself through it before you go. So what are you going to wear? What perfume you're going to have on? Are you going to have your nails done? What are you going to drink? Who are you going to talk to? Who are you going to avoid? And just visualize yourself walking through all the way to the end, saying goodbye, getting in the cab, breathing in, feeling like proud of yourself, and then having that kind of like, and in the morning I'm going to wake up and I'm going to have a coffee and sit on the deck and the sun's going to be shining. I'm going to feel so proud of myself. That doing that before you go, your brain is like, this is what's happening, this is we've done this. So that's a really good thing to do. Or just say no, like JOMO, joy of missing out. Say, I'm really sorry I can't come. You don't have to explain yourself. And then really go to town with your night at home. So clean PJs, clean sheets, music on, nice food for yourself, just really kind of get that dopamine hit from, treating yourself like, I'm not going. I did that the first time I said no to a party. I literally jumped on my bed, like up and down, like I did it, because it's such a parable for a lot of us who have spent our lives trying to please other people and fit in. That's like badass kind of real rebellion, sober or changing your drinking rebellion. So, just trying to feed whatever you need inside, and that kind of like, I can do this and I can take that power, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So my number one tip, if you are going to that environment, is to remember that it's okay to leave it. So many of us, I think, have ended up staying at parties with people that we weren't connecting with, and we didn't enjoy getting drunk to cope with the experience, rather than realizing it's okay to say goodbye and go home. So true. And actually, I heard somebody recently describe it as the power hour. Decide that you're going to go, but I'm going to go for an hour, and I'm going to speak to all of the people that I want to speak to, and then I'm going to leave. So you can take control of how you engage in the social situation, set boundaries around it, make sure you've got an escape path that you can escape if you need to. And if things get out of hand, 5 minutes in the toilet just by yourself. Breathing, having a think about what's going on, noticing what's happening for you, noticing your thoughts and feelings, and then making a conscious decision about what you want to do next. All of that can really help, even if you are in the midst of it. If it's all got out of control, go and lock yourself in the loo for 5 minutes and splash water on your face, have a think.
That escape plan is just it's the only way I get out of the door, really, to go to those events. I have to know that I'm able to get home. That's why I never drive, even though I'm not drinking, is because I need that's a good tip, actually. Don't be the designated driver, because then you'll have to wait for the other people to drive them home. So either go and drive yourself and get yourself home, or go somewhere that's near a bus stop, because you don't want to be staying longer than you have to, that's for sure.
No. Oh, golly, when people have started telling the same story for the 8th time.
I did it for years.
Yeah, no fun for everyone. You have to be trying to cope with that.
Yeah. And I think a good tip at that point is like, this is one thing that I noticed. I think this came from William Porter, was like, as soon as the first person repeats themselves, that's your cue to it's also your cue that you don't have to say goodbye. You can just I'm going to the I'm going to the toilet, or I'm going to the bar. You just leave, because at that point they're not going to remember, and so the next day, I think he said, like, the next day he was at a work party and everyone was like, oh, what time did you leave? And he was like, 12, and they're like, okay, fine. You only left at like 8:30 or something.
Yeah.
But, you know,
Perfect.
They just accept what you say. So don't go around saying goodbye to everyone. Just leave. You know.
Yeah, sneak out the fire exit. That's a good one.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing, just my reflection on, because we talked a little bit about, those red, amber, green people at the beginning. I know that there are people who are important to me, who enjoy a drink and really enjoy socializing with a drink. And what I've learned is that I can't go out with them one-on-one. They're good in a group, but we want such different things out of our socializing that we're never going to be compatible one-on-one in a pub, and that includes members of my family. I can't do that, but we're okay in a group. So it's okay to, like I think you said, Mandy, to say no to things, and also to suggest amendments to things. If a particular configuration of socializing doesn't work for you, say you've got a group of friends who want to go out and share a bottle of wine. If you want to see those people but you don't want to drink, why don't you suggest brunch instead? You can make situations work as well as saying a hard no to them. You can take some control in those situations as well. That can really help.
Yeah, and I think we're all quite advanced in this experience. So we're saying this with quite a lot of strength. But I know when you're first starting out, it's like I can't say no. Like I couldn't possibly. Like I can't. It's terrifying because your worst fear is being rejected by people. So I think at that moment, if you're really early on, it's just protect yourself, protect that. Just say you can't, you're not well, or just that you're too tired. Just keep it really small. And when you feel more resilient to things, then you can start pushing the sober sort of socializing further. But yeah, I mean, we've done the rounds a few times, so I know it sounds easier than it is in reality at the beginning.
I think as well, like don't feel guilty about taking control. I feel like everyone, especially when you're meeting up in a group, has their own expectations of what the evening is going to look like, and they're putting their spin on it. Someone else wants this, someone else wants that. So don't be afraid to actually, as Dru was saying, take control, and don't feel guilty about it either, because everyone's doing it in some way. Someone's deciding, we're going here next, and everyone's, yeah, sure, okay. Do feel free to put your own spin on the night and enjoy that part of it as well.
Brilliant.
I think also you think people are going to have a go at you for not drinking, but actually that's never happened to me. And the only I get accolades now. I get like people are intrigued, they want to know, gosh, you go out to a social event and you don't drink, like that's amazing. So things are changing. Like you don't get people hassling you all the time. People are just interested in what you're doing, and now I can ramble on and go, this is why I do it, and chew their ears off instead of them slurring at me. So it's actually better.
Brilliant. So thank you so much for your contributions to this discussion. It's been really helpful, and I hope it's been useful to people watching as well. If people want to connect with you, how can they find you and what's going on in your world? Let's start with you, Ron.
So we're on social media at Yada Collective, YADA. And yeah, that's probably the best way to kind of connect with us. We run an online store as well as a bar as well. So yeah, just check us out. I don't do too much on my personal page at the moment. But yeah, that's probably the best ways to find us: Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and our website as well, which is just the same but .co.uk.
Brilliant. Matt?
So if you check out our website, www.edgetc.org, then you can see our schedule of activities. We're delivering everything at the moment. It's sort of hybrid, so you can either come in person if you're in London, or also online. So we have creative writing activities, we have drama activities, we have dance, we have a peer-led check-in every week. So if you're just looking for a safe space to come and talk about some of these questions or issues, that's also available. So everything's free, and it runs going 5-6 days of the week now. So check us out, www.edgetc.org.
Brilliant. Thanks, Matt. Victoria?
You can go to my website, which is drunkmummysobermummy.com. You can get support about being sober curious on there. I also have a Facebook group for women questioning their alcohol take, which is Drunk Mummy Sober Mummy, the group. And obviously listen to the Sober Awkward podcast. It's on Spotify and iTunes and wherever you get their podcasts from. I think we've got Sober Dave coming on next week, so that's exciting.
Brilliant.
Yeah, and obviously on Instagram, which is at Drunkmummysobermummy or at Sober Awkward.
Fabulous. And Mandy?
Well, everything, just lovesober.com is where the hub of everything is. You can find all the links to everything there. So, yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you all for taking part. For those of you still engaged in the festival, you find everything at joinclubsoda.com/festival. We've got events running throughout the rest of this month, including opportunities to meet and socialise with people which don't centre on alcohol. So if you want to make connections with people, I'm running groups on Wednesday evenings and Friday evenings. We've also got an end of festival social event on the 31st that you can come to. And our events calendar is slowly filling up as the world opens up and changes again. It's slowly filling up with opportunities for real world alcohol-free social connection, which is super exciting as well. So do enjoy all of that. Thank you all so much for your contribution. It's been great to see you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Drew.
See ya.